And good morning to everyone. I hope you're all well. Many thanks for joining today's Academy session. My name is Paul Wheeler from the Customer Success team in the UK. I'll be hosting today's session. We're going to discuss the authentication mechanisms for RDP, that's the Refinitiv Data Platform. Today's presenters will be Luke O'Sullivan, who's the Senior Product Manager for Real-Time Feeds. And then we have our Senior Technical Specialist for RTDS, Joe Miller. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. Excuse me. Today's session is being recorded. All your microphones are muted and cameras switched off. You will have the ability to unmute yourselves after the presentation to ask questions to the presenters. Alternatively, you can use the chat function to post your questions during the session as you feel free. Just going to post a little disclaimer on the screen. So if you could just take a second just to read through that, please. Okay. So today's agenda, Luke's going to provide an introduction and overview of the authentication mechanism. And then Joe is going to run through the configuration of RTDS and a demo of connecting RTDS to the real-time optimized feed. And then we're going to finish up with a Q&A session. So I'll just hand it over to you, Luke, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Paul. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining. My name is Luke O'Sullivan. I'm part of the Real-Time Enterprise team at Refinitiv. I'm product manager for the Real-Time Optimized product. I'm going to give a quick overview on authentication Real-Time Optimized, and then Joe's going to run through with a demo of RTDS and Real-Time Optimized for you. So RTDS is Real-Time Distribution System, used to be called TREP, or used to be called RMDS, depending how old you are. Previously, this has been used alongside Electron Edge devices or Electron Connect as the data feed source for BON service. The BON service is Bandwidth Optimized Network. That is the conflated variant of the Refinitiv Real-Time feed. So that's where Refinitiv will conflate quote updates down to 3 updates per second. RTDS traditionally has always used an ILA as a login to either the Edge device or Electron Connect. So what's changing? Going forward, Refinitiv Real-Time Optimized is going to become the next generation data feed product for that BON data. It uses a new authentication system that's part of the Refinitiv Data Platform. Those not familiar with Refinitiv Data Platform, this is a single platform which is going to provide the full breadth of content that Refinitiv offers, whether that's market and reference data, analytics, or third-party content. So Real-Time Optimized is just one of the products that's going to be available through that platform. We can move on to the next slide, please. So how is Real-Time Optimized authenticated? So it moves away from the ILA concepts that we had with Edge and Electron Connect. So as part of this product, we're going to provide a service ID and a client secret, which is effectively a password. Upon initial launch of the consuming application, an authentication request is going to be passed through to the data platform, and that's going to use the ID and the secret that we've provided. The response back from the platform will contain an access token, and then when the consuming application goes to make its mount for the real-time data from Real-Time Optimized, the access token is forwarded on as part of this request, and it's sent up to the authentication gateway. Once confirmed as a valid token, that's when the user profile is pulled down, a login successful message is returned back to the consuming application, and then the customer can retrieve any data that they're entitled for. And in this instance, I guess where we're talking about the consuming application, because we're thinking specifically around migrating away from BON Edge to real-time optimized for RTDS, that consuming application would be the ADH or ADS within RTDS. So it wouldn't be each downstream consuming application itself. It would just be RTDS making a mount up to real-time optimized. The access token itself does not expire for the lifetime of a session. So if there is a channel cut for whatever reason during that session and you have to reconnect, then there will be a new token that needs to be requested. One subtlety in that area is if you go to make a login request and it's not immediately successful, at that point, the access token does have an expiry for anything that hasn't logged in. And then if we move on to the last slide, or last slide of my section, this just showing basically a sample authentication request, so what that will look like, and the response which gets returned. So you can see you've got the URL there for the data platform. The body of the request is going to contain the credentials and the secret, and you can see in the response back you have the access token reference there, and the expiry part in that response that relates to the expiry if there is no successful login. As I said previously, once you're connected, that token is good for the duration of the session. It's worth noting that a single service ID will be able to make multiple connections. So in the example of a client using RTDS to connect to real-time optimized across a pair of ADHs, we would expect a single service ID to be used there. One of the benefits of doing that is because there's only a single service ID, we entitle it once, and then you know that any permissioning and entitlement done across them it's not mapped because it's only done once. We know that we have problems with pairs of edge devices and multiple edge devices where sometimes permissions can get out of sync because they have to be manually entered onto each side. So one of the benefits of moving on to the optimized product obviously will be that permission part will be kept more in sync. So that's my kind of brief overview of the product and a very high level of how authentication is going to work. And then if there are no questions, we'll pass over to Joe for a live demo.
Thanks, Luke. So my name is Joe Miller. I'm based out of what traditionally, historically was Oak Brook. Been around the product a long time. I now lead the development team as well. So kind of take you through migration and even adding RTO as another server on your backbone, right? So everything I'm going to show today is going to be ADH, but obviously it all applies to RTC as well. So you can do the same things you can with ADH as RTC. So go ahead and hit the next slide, Paul. So this is, thanks. So this is just a quick overview of what the config looks like, right? So if you're migrating or you're adding a new route to RTO, these are kind of the key things we need to connect in the RTO. Anybody using 3.5.2 or previously already connecting in RTO, the authentication method is a new parameter. Before it was just token management, but now that we've had different versions, we wanted the ability to configure each version independently. And we kept backward support for token management, so you guys can still drop in 3.5.3 if you're already connected to RTO today, and you'll be fine. But so for 3.5.3, we added a new authentication method, so you can do the OAuthPasswordGrant, which is what's in production today. And then obviously the version 2, as Luke discussed, is the new option, and that's what I'll show. Everything else is the same as before. Location, so you guys can choose all the different regions based on that location. It's really just we scrape the response from service discovery and really kind of find the location that matches whatever string you put in there. Obviously encrypted, I can get in details about we're using Reactor. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so all the token management stuff is all done through the RTSDK Reactor. And then obviously your credentials, right? Your username and your user password. I'll try to get in all these great details, but we can talk about migration resiliency as well, right? It's from a single ADH or multiple ADHs. You can bring in both your edge device servers and your RTO servers, and you can either load balance across them. You can do what we call ALB, asymmetrical load balancing, so you can apply different costs to different groups or different servers. So if you want for example, your RTO to be your backup, you can assign that a higher cost. So only when your edge device goes down, you can flip over RTO and vice versa. And then another next option is what we call branch gateway distributor backup. Anybody spin around Triarch, RMDS is familiar with those terms, but that gives you that auto failback mechanism. ALB doesn't have the auto failback, but the BGD does. So you guys can have BGD backups of edge device and RTO, and those are all options. Obviously, your edge device will eventually for bond go away, but in the meantime, those offer some resiliency options for you. And then as far as tconfig, right? Really, your tsetup and tcommit. But other than that, it's just two steps, right? And we'll kind of show that, and I'll show moving your current edge device route to RTO, and then I'll show you adding an RTO route as well with a server cost, and kind of show you some failure scenarios there. So, next slide. So, PowerPoint's not my expertise. But here's a real quick slide, kind of show you high level what you've got going on, right? So you have your ADH RTC. We obviously use ETA RSL as the routes, traditional, right? RTS, TREP, connect to your edge device. We kick off a Reactor to connect to RTO. We also use Reactor when you're going to TRCC contributions, right? So again, just gives you that level of we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so we just integrated and reused the Reactor there. You can use Reactor for standard routes as well, but kind of why would you? We disable watch lists, we disable cache, we disable everything. It's really get access to token management and for TRCC to get access to the tunnel streams. But one parameter I forgot to show in the previous slide was service discovery. So service discovery does a query to RDP, and then we get a response back, right? So it'll contain all the endpoint locations globally, and then what we can do is we can filter that out based on the location that you specify in the route. We kind of look for the multiple availability zones for you. And we kind of call those standard endpoints, but if you're running hot standby, for example, out of RTO, you can use the premium locations and then go directly to the locations for each ADH that you want. But that's what's available today. And obviously, you can look in the log file for ADH RTC. When we finally choose an endpoint based on your location, we'll go ahead and log the information that we choose. So for example, here, you'll see a log for the endpoint that we choose. Information that comes back for service discovery will have the port, obviously provider, AWS today, transport, TCP, and then obviously RWF. So we support it for WebSockets as well. Test client has all the functionality to connect directly to RTO if you want, using both WebSockets and the Reactor RSL connection. So I can kind of go into that too if you guys really want to see that. But there's an example in the demo manual that we ship that shows you how to use test client to connect to RTO as well. So yeah, that's kind of the high level there. And again, because they're separate routes, we can do this from a single ADH or across multiple ADHs, however you guys want to do it. You can do multiple routes. Right now, RTO is going to limit you to 5 connections per unique credentials, right? But you can either do those 5 routes from a single ADH or across multiple ADHs. If you really want to stitch a larger watch list together, you can go ahead and kick off multiple routes. So I'll share my screen now and kind of go through some of this stuff for you. Okay, can everyone see my screen? And hopefully it's large enough. Increase the font a little bit there, but so I'm running 353. This is all on just my local VM here in Plano. Actually, here's our lab. So I've got a 353 ADH running. I'm currently connected to an edge device. This is a local edge device connection. Nothing special, standard, single server type deal. ADS 353 running, and obviously seeing my server on the backbone there. I've got around, 50,000 items open or so. So the first step I wanted to show was kind of how would you move your existing edge device route to RTO. So as I kind of showed there in the slide, Really simple steps here, and I've just scripted it to kind of save me time. You guys can script it the same way, but obviously you're going to do your route cloud step, and this step's going to add, that step's going to do is going to add your URLs for your service discovery and for your token management, right? And then you're going to come back and you're going to hit it again, and what this is going to do is it's going to go ahead and append the additional things that you need to your edge device route. So the first thing is going to be route cloud. This is your global level tconfig here. So you're just going to enter in your URLs, right? So hope the product will default to the production URLs. And then we start getting into the per node, per route stuff, right? So you're going to change your route to use Reactor. Encryption, of course. Protocol. I have to enter in a proxy host here because I'm running in my lab. Proxy port. Service discovery. So service discovery defaults to true, right? You can disable service discovery and still connect to RTO if you want. So if you knew the specific endpoint that you want to connect to, you can go ahead and disable service discovery, put your endpoint in the host list, and then set your port, and then it'll connect directly to that endpoint. Obviously, you know, as we change and things get dynamically moved around a little bit, you know, obviously I would recommend leaving service discovery on and just using that location to really filter out the endpoints that you want. But it is an option to turn off service discovery if you want, but I would just leave it on. Your authentication method, so it's going to default to version 1, just because we wanted to make a drop in for you guys. Anybody connect the RTO exists currently, but I'm going to go ahead and do version 2. I made this format, so in the future, if we add additional authentication methods, we can continue with this format, so we can go OAuth and go from there. But this is what we offer today. Location, I'm just going US East, has multiple availability zones. I'm good. Here's your username. So it's going to pick up the username from your existing route, but you're going to have to obviously change it for your new credentials. You know, these were my credentials going to the edge device. I'm going to move it to RTO, so I have to use my new username and password. So I've saved this stuff off for some internal users. And then like before, this is an obfuscated password. We provide a utility to obfuscate your passwords along with the product. And what the ADH will do, we'll go ahead and obfuscate when it reads it from the config file. So at rest, your password's obscure. That's it. So I did my T-commit. So I've updated my RMDSCNF, and obviously nothing's changed, right? What we wanted to try and do is really, if you have an ADH running and you're pulling existing feeds, existing publishers, providers, you might not want to restart your ADH to just do this flip. So what you can do is you can actually just leave your ADH running. You've already updated the configuration file now. So we have this neat little option here that you can add routes and remove routes to the monitor. This through a REST interface as well, using the put options, right? So you can put add route, remove route through REST. So you guys don't have to be in the box to do this. But what I can do is I can now remove my edge device route, which obviously everything will go down, but only for that service. And then I can re-add the edge device route. What that'll do is the ADH will reread the configuration database at that point and then apply all the new parameters to the edge device route. So hopefully when I remove the route and then I'm going to add it back in, I'm going to flip from the edge device over to RTO. And then obviously the ADS should fail everything over to RTO at that point. So I'm going to move the edge device out. Everything goes down as expected. And now I'm going to re-add it. And then with the hope is that when we come back up, I'm going to see a reactor channel, and we're going to connect into RTO. So when it comes back up, if you didn't notice before, but usually our session names are RSL channel, but this is a clear indicator that we would flip to a reactor channel now, just by the session name. And obviously you can see that I'm going ahead and I'm filling all my items back over to RTO. If you're looking down in the reactor channel, you'll see our endpoint name. So obviously that's the endpoint name we chose, the port number, everything else. A cool little feature out of the box, RTO supports round trip latency. So you guys can monitor round trip latency coming out of the cloud. Give you a real quick look what the ADH log file looks like when we choose the endpoint. and see when the reactor starts, what tokens it's, or what URLs it's using, and then obviously what endpoint is selected. And that's really it, right? So I've now flipped my edge device route to RTO. I'm up and running. I didn't have to restart anything. I just had to remove the route, add the route, obviously update the config before you do that, and you're good to go. The next thing I want to show is say you didn't want to remove your edge device route. You want to keep the edge device server running, but you want to add an additional RTO route, whether you want to go into pure load balancing or you will go into ALB or BGE backup. But what I'm going to show is ALB. What we're going to do here is we're going to shut down the ADH, and we're going to flip it back to the way it was. So I just got to flip my config file back to the original. I'm going to restart the ADH. Back to the edge device. And now what I'm going to show is if you want to add RTO route to your existing setup. So again, I'm going to show you that you don't have to restart anything, right? You're just going to go ahead and add RTO. All your edge device servers stay intact. Everything stays up. Everything's good. But we're just going to add the RTO route. So what I'm going to run is this script here. A little bit more involved. Right now, you're not modifying an existing route, but you're going to add a new route, right? So you got to go to the typical setup, right? Instead of 2 steps, there's 4 steps, but you're going to add the route from scratch. You're going to have to add the server. You can just use a server edge template that was shipped for this, no problems. And then you're back to you're going to modify that new route that you just added with the cloud. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. So the first thing that's going to come up is we're adding the route from scratch. And the first thing that's prompted is your port. Now, when you use service discovery, we'll ignore the port and host list because we're going to get all that information back from the service discovery. Now, if you turn off service discovery, that's where your port and host list have to be set to the endpoint and port. But for now, I know I'm going to ignore this, so I'm just going to keep the default. I'm just going to put in an empty host list. That's fine. Service list, of course. Lurk around DD. The service name stays the same between edge device and RTO. Username, I'll modify that later when I get in my route cloud step. Now server costs. Here's where I can kick on ALB. So by default, all the servers are 0. So the ADS is going to load balance equally across those. Anyone familiar with ALB, what happens when you apply a higher cost group, the ADS is always going to route request to the lower cost group first. And then only when that server goes away is it going to route or maxes out its normalized load level, then it'll flip it to the higher cost. With ALB, there is no dynamic failback, so I'll kind of go and show how that kind of works. But with BGD, if you want to get more sophisticated setup, that's where BGD can do the auto failback. And then you can set up time, so you only do the auto failback after so many hours. So you're not thrashing, or if you want to give it, time to do it off hour or something like that. So we don't have BGD backup currently in the RTC, but that's planned for this quarter in 3.5.4. So I'm going to enter a cost group, max cache. You're going to get that from the RTO. Open window, just all the usual stuff. So the only thing I've changed from our default server edge CPD file is just the server cost. And then now we're back to the route cloud, the global level, right? So we're just adding the URLs. I'm just going to take all the defaults I had set up. Here's user reactor, right? I'm not changing anything here. I'm just kind of going through this. Obviously here, because we added a route, a socket, we're going to have to change it to encrypted. Because now I'm adding a encrypted route to RTO. And here's my proxy host. So the same steps I did before at this point. Server discovery, true. And again, I'm going to go with the version 2. ClientCred. Location, US East. Username. These are my credentials. Password. Obfuscated. T-commit, and you're all set. So nothing changes my edge device route. But now what I can do is I can come in here and I can just do a simple add route, right? I'm going to add RTO. Hopefully what this is going to do is now the ADS will see multiple servers. So it's going to see an edge device server, it's going to see an RTO server. And then the ADS, only thing it's going to route differently is based on the server cost now. So now I have a reactor, I have my edge device route still up, I have an RTO route up now. It's going to do the same exact thing it did with the last demo I showed. So your endpoint, port, round trip latency, all that good stuff. Hook up the servers up, so you have multiple servers now. My edge device server is going to be the cost 0 server. So obviously nothing was affected to anything that was already washed. Everything's flowing fine. And then obviously my RTO server is now a higher cost group. So any new requests, the ADS is always going to route to the edge device for now. But if I wanted to, or if I had an outage on my edge device, what I can do is just to kind of simulate, I can remove my edge device route. All right, and what that will do is it'll cause the ADS to then fail everything over the cloud. So this is how you can kind of use resiliency between your edge device and RTO, given your migration plans, either ALB or BGP backup. Then obviously what you can do is bring the edge device route back up. And again, this is just simulating disconnects. So now we have both routes, both servers active. We're still locked in on the RTO server because again, ALB doesn't have auto failback. But right now, any new requests will go ahead and hit the edge device server. So for example, if we now remove the RTO route, this would just fail right back to the edge device. Re-add the RTO route. Back to where we were before. Now I don't show other services, other routes. I don't show publishers, anything else on my EH right now. But again, there's if there would be no impact to those other guys as you do this activity. So so you can really do all this stuff without a restart in the ADH. So I think that's all I wanted to show. Feel free to ask questions, Q&A. You guys. I'm sure you can get a hold of my email address. Any questions, let me know. But that's all I had for today.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah. Well, one thing, Paul, I did want to show real quick test server, our test client. You know, you guys, again, the demo manual has some examples of this, but with test client, again, kind of the same options that you have. We use RT SDK reactor through that. And the cool thing with test client is you can use WebSockets to access RTO as well. I really won't demo anything here, but it's going to have the same options that you would have when you're prompted with tconfig, right? So it's going to have version 1, version 2, your token URLs, service discovery URLs, location, proxies, and obviously we have a couple different loadable plugins here between whether you want to use React or whether you want to use WebSockets. So that's another great way if you guys would just want to test connectivity initially before trying to move your ADHs or RTCs. Test client is a great way to kind of initially do that and test your connectivity, you know, and then do your migration when you're ready with your ADHs and RTC. Obviously, RTC in the cloud, you can connect to RTO. The RTC CNF file has all the same exact parameters that I showed you with the tconfig. So it should look very familiar to you, anybody running from ADH to RTC. So, all right, thanks, Luke. And Paul?
Thanks, Joe. Thank you very much. I've just, you can now unmute yourselves if you'd like to ask any questions. I think we have one question in the chat. I think it was posted by Christopher. He says, can you clarify where is the ADS in your description?
The ADS in my description? So the ADS is just on my local backbone, right? So it's just an ADS LAN. We do support, obviously.
Sorry, I mean in the initial introductory description showing the OAuth handshaking, there was a mention of an ADS.
That was probably my part, Christopher. Apologies, I couldn't see the questions coming in at the time. So, real-time optimized uses enterprise platform software as well. So effectively, what any client application is connecting to in real-time optimized is an ADS instance. So it could have been. Does that answer the question?
So it's an ADS component, which is a component of the RTO, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the client-facing component will be a ADS instance running in AWS environment.
Yeah, to open the hood a little bit, there's an ADS running the edge device as well, right? So all the distribution internally that we do is using ADS POPs primarily.
But that's precisely why I asked the question, right? Where's this ADS, right? Is it on the edge? Is it part of the RTO? Is it my ADS I'm running in my environment? Yeah, so that's why I asked for clarification. Thank you.
Yep, same exact ADS. Obviously, we have a little bit different configuration options, custom configuration for what we want to do. If you guys go ahead and look at the RTC Cloud manual that we ship out, we kind of show you what our cloud architecture is that we recommend and we use internally. So it's kind of the two-level, an ADS POP cache and ADS POP fan-out. That's exactly what we're using in RTO. So exactly what we recommend to you guys, we're using the same thing already in production. So, but that should all be documented in RTC Cloud manual. So you guys, anybody looking to go to the cloud, that's our recommended architecture. And again, it's the same stuff we use in RTO. Yeah. And then I think the question comes up a lot, is ADS POP versus RTC? So RTC is basically the renamed, rebranded ADS POP, right? So there's no differences other than just kind of a name change. We still ship the ADS POP CNAP, we still support the ADS POP, but obviously we're trying to push customers to start commercially using the RTC. And then so if you guys do a diff between ADS POP CNAP, RTC CNAP, you'll see identical other than the component name. So yeah, don't get confused by RTC ADS POP. If you guys even wanted to start running RTC binary, but you still want to use your ADS POP CNAP file, you want to keep all your shared memory, all your logging ADS, you can do that. RTC has a dash, I think it's a -n option. So you can actually run the RTC binary and kick it into ADS mode for you guys looking to migrate. But obviously we'd love to see you guys start to migrate for RTC to RTC. If you're doing any new installs, obviously just go with RTC.
See, Jeff's just posted the link to the RTC manual as well in the chat. Is there anybody else have any other questions? No, I'll take that as a no. Okay. So I've just put my contact details on the screen, and here you'll find some more links to the training sessions as well, academy classes. So what I'd like to ask you to do is, I'm just going to pop a link to a link to a questionnaire that I'd like you to fill in, please. It just helps us further develop our courses, and it'd be really appreciated if you do that. It takes a minute to do. Thank you very much. So I'd like to thank you all for attending, and a thanks to Luke and Joe for their time today. I hope you found the session useful. And if you have any follow-up questions that you think of after, please direct them directly to myself or by your account teams, whichever you find easier. I will be sending out the link to the presentation, and if you require the link to the recording as well, just let me know. So I hope you have a good rest of the day, and thank you again for joining, and hope to see you again on another Academy session in the near future. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you everyone for coming. Thanks, Paul.
Cheers.
Thanks for organising, Paul, putting it all together.
No problems.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Cheers then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.